This lesson is going to be on the top 5 Meg White drum beats that I think every drummer should know, specifically from her playing with the White Stripes. I love her drumming because of its simplicity. I believe it's on purpose. I've always believed that. They beef up her drum sounds. She leaves a lot of space in the music. The whole idea of the White Stripes was minimalism, and she played to that perfectly. So some of the things that you take as somewhat simplistic are actually somewhat hard to replicate at some of the tempos that they do, at some of the slower tempos. And I believe she paved the way for bands like Vampire Weekend, for bands like the Black Keys to come along and have that simplistic style that plays towards the song. Now, before we get started, for you to have a successful lesson, if you want it, the sheet music is below. This is a fantastic lesson if you're a beginner just starting out, or if you're not a beginner. It'll teach you some things about keeping space in the music and playing simplistically. As well, this is a series, so you can go watch. I've got linked below a bunch of them, but specifically the Dave Grohl lesson you will probably dig with that. And if you have not checked it out yet, all that's in a pinned comment in the video description. If you haven't checked it out yet, there's a new podcast that I put out every Tuesday, The Drum Show with yours truly, and I actually answer, the whole show is about answering your questions. So they're all questions from you all. I would love for you to go over there, rate that, review it, subscribe to it, and let me know any questions you may have. Now, let's go ahead and get started with this, with the first drum beat. It is from the song Fell in Love with a Girl. This song, the simplicity of it, the actual video where they're building Legos, Mikhail Gondry was the director for that. Just fantastic video. The idea, the playing, everything. I love the energy. This is what hooked me on the band. So this part had to be in there for me. The part is very, very simplistic. It's at 195 BPM. It's played on the crash cymbal, and the song's only 1 minute and 55 seconds, right? So we're gonna have a kick drum on 1 with the hi-hat, and we're gonna have a crash cymbal. Then on beat 2, we have 2 and with a crash cymbal. Beat 3 is empty, and beat 4, we have a crash cymbal with a snare. That part is so simple, but if you go and listen to the song, it propels that song forward, and she just nails that part the entire time, stays right on it. I just really love, again, the simplicity of her playing, and for me, how purposeful that is. All right, so let's check this out. It's gonna go like this. 3 and 4 and... 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's the hard thing about that groove? Keeping it consistent the entire time and keeping the energy there where it's pushing that tempo. Now the next groove we have is from My Doorbell. And it's gonna be exactly 100 BPMs slower. It's gonna be at 95 BPM. A lot of times her treatment, a lot of times her playing seems simplistic, but whenever you listen to that, if she were just a beginner drummer that sounded beginner all the time, then you would have an inconsistency that was not consistent, if that makes sense. But what happens is you have an inconsistent treatment of notes in different songs that is consistent within that song. What does that mean? It means the way she treats the inner beats and the 16th notes is consistent. Once she lays into that, that's going to be the feel there. All right, she's very signature with that, and that in a couple of these songs she treats those 16th notes. So this is one of those, My Doorbell, with how she treats the 16th note hit on beat 3. So again, floor tom, gonna be a simplistic groove. We're gonna have kick and floor tom on 1 as a quarter note. Then we're gonna have floor tom and snare on beat 2. And then here is the hard thing, is treating this, this 16th note, these two 16th notes, how she treats them the entire time and making that consistent. So on beat 3, it's 3E with the kick drum and the floor tom, and then it's 4 and. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and. Then she takes it over to the hi-hat. 1, 2, 3, And later she'll take it to the crash cymbal as well. All right, now it's hard to keep it at 95 BPM with a groove that is that open. All right, so let's hear it up to tempo. Something you'll see in a lot of these grooves is that a lot of times we focus on separating the kick and the hi-hat, right? We want to have that separation. So if we played a pattern like this, it wouldn't the hi-hat wouldn't necessarily follow it. It'd go. But she goes. Now, you may say, oh, it's just because she's not a great drummer and she can't separate them. But there's other songs where she separates the limbs fine. Like we'll just see where she separates a ghost note. So again, this is very intentional. The simplicity of the parts is very intentional, and the spaciousness in them. All right, so let's look at the next one, Icky Thump. Really love this song, and I love her treatment of the 16th note. On this song, the hit that comes on the of 4 is almost on 1. Like you have to listen back and go, is that on 1 or is that actually on the She skews it so far to that side, it almost lands on 1. But it's consistent like that. All right, so let's check out what she's doing. Over here, she's got a big ride cymbal. She's gonna be crashing on it, and it's gonna be 8 notes until she gets to 4. And I'll show you. So it's gonna be 1 and 2E and a ghost note here on the of 2, 1 and 2E and kick drum on 3 and then here's the hits. It goes 4E and remember, you got to try to line those hits exactly up. It's really hard when that song to line it up with the feel that they have. So that part is 3 and 4 and the next measure, we're gonna omit the 1, right? We hit on the of 4. It's gonna go, it's gonna start on the and of 1. So 1 and 2E and 3E and 4. All right, so it's these hits that are happening with the guitar. So those two measures together. 3 and 4 and all right, so it's going with the guitar. It's really heavy. This lesson is just wrecking the knuckle on my pinky. I should have raised this higher because I'm just like plowing into that floor time. All right, the next one we have is Seven Nation Army. If you play in a cover band, this is the White Stripes song that you should learn because this is the one that people will recognize. Again, really simple, really simple. I give this one to a lot of beginner drummers. The thing that a lot of people miss though is actually the open hi-hat that's happening there. So it's floor tom, kick drum, and open hi-hat on quarter notes. What that does is that fills out, because remember, there's no bass in the music. You have to think about these things when you're playing music. Like, how am I gonna fill this out? We have no bass guitars, we have no low end. So they beef the drums up, and she does things with these, she does things like have these big washy ringing cymbals that help fill out that sound. Or she goes the other direction and makes it very sharp sounds, like that groove that we saw. Right, where she goes the other direction And she makes it to where it's much more sparse and simplistic. So we have quarter notes on those three voices.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Then she adds a snare drum on 2 and 4. And then we go to the chorus where she has a very similar groove. Hi-hat's gonna be on quarter notes, but it's closing this time, crashing on quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4 for 2 measures. And the third measure, it goes. We have this almost a triplet figure. You can think of that as a dotted 16th note with a 16th note behind it, or an 8th note with a 16th note behind it, excuse me, and then another 16th, or you can think of it as a triplet. It almost lays the same that way. But again, listen to the song to get the feel. I've got that full part written out for you, and I'll demo the different parts of it at full tempo, 125 BPM. Last but not least, we have Death Letter. It's coming in at 93 BPM, and again, we find her using a groove where she's not separating the hi-hat from the kick drum. She plays that specifically and leaves the space in between there. It's a very unique way to approach these sounds, which is why I'm pointing it out so much. I believe it's intentional. Is why, because a lot of people they just dismiss drummers that play in bands that have a certain vibe, a very rough garage rock, or rough around the edges, open sound, and that's just like that's their sound. That's what they do. If you want Rush, you should go listen to Rush or something like that, you know. We're gonna keep the hi-hat slightly open. So it's gonna go 1 and 2, 3, 4. Very simple. It's not wide open, not closed, but just slightly open. Hopefully this lesson has shown you a little bit more about Meg White and her playing, get a greater appreciation for her. If you dig it, go check out the others in the series. They are linked below. Specifically, you'll probably like the Dave Grohl one. Go check out the podcast. It's coming out every week on Tuesdays. Hit the thumbs up button if this helped you. Share it with somebody that you think it may help as well. But whatever you do, I'll see you here in the next video.